My name is Andy Hammerstein. I'm a painter and a local resident here in South Salem, New York. My art is inspired a lot by music and by rhythm, and I apply a lot of that kind of thinking into the paintings that I make. For example, with some of the paintings you'll see here, I will be overlapping different sets of rhythms on top of each other to produce kind of what would happen if you were to put, 13 meters over 10 meters. It looks like something, and I've been exploring what dissonant music might look like. I'm also working with a kind of rainbow palette on some of my paintings. These paintings they're time consuming. Once I decide what it is I'm going to do, it takes a month or so to be able to do it. But usually I know what I'm going to do before I even begin. It's just a matter of execution. I'm sharing this show with a artist named Julie Rosenberg, whose art is one of taking guitars and embellishing them with abstract designs that are stunning and complement my own paintings quite well. We actually go together really well. She does guitars with images on them, and I do images about sound. And I think that we're a great match. You should come and see her guitars. I hope that you'll have a chance to see them and come and visit Chroma Gallery.
Hello, I'm Linda Press-Wolf, and welcome to another in our series, A Conversation With. This is a show that's devoted to local artists, photographers, musicians, authors, as well as people who in some way have made a difference in our community. Today, I'll be talking with Andy Hammerstein. Oscar Andy Hammerstein is the grandson of the lyricist Oscar Hammerstein, who, along with the composer Richard Rodgers, left us legendary and magical musicals. Andy has created his own legacy as a talented abstract painter, writer, producer, lecturer, and family historian. It's a pleasure to have you on the program. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Andy has had a number of successful art exhibits, including one at the gallery we're here today, the Chroma Fine Art Gallery in Katona. Your show opened recently. Tell us about it.
Well, this is the second show that I've had with Chroma Fine Art Gallery, and I think that they have a wonderful sense of taste, and I'm glad to be a part of their roster. Currently, I'm exhibiting with a woman named Julie Rosenberg, who adorns electric guitars with incredible colors and patterns, and I think our work very much complements each other. So I feel like we put on a very strong show together. I wish we could do this show together in other places as well. I think we go along well together.
Oh, that's great to hear. So let's go back a little bit. What first caught your interest in becoming an artist, and how old were you?
Well, there was always that art kid in grammar school and high school and middle school, and I was that kid from the very earliest age. From grammar school, I was given one-man shows in my school, and I attended the Art Students League at the age of 12, where I started drawing the nude, and have always been precociously talented at hand-eye coordination when it came to art. So it never seemed like it was a choice. It always seemed predestined, really.
Now, did becoming an artist, did this talent seem to come naturally, or did you study art?
Well, I guess you could say I studied, but I could also say that it came naturally as well. I was maybe the youngest person drawing the nude at the Art Students League. I've always shown a kind of precocity. I remember when I was a little kid and they were asking kids to draw the figure. Many people were still drawing like stick figures, and I was doing a man in white shorts doing a forehand and a woman in white shorts doing a backhand. And they just took me aside and they said, you're outside the parabola here, So it just seems that I had really no choice in doing what I'm doing now.
Your talents were recognized very early.
Right away.
Now, did you ever consider another career path, maybe in the music or entertainment field or any other endeavor?
Well, my is theater business, so they didn't really know a lot about the art world. And I guess they were supportive, but they had no way of being helpful in terms of like what I should do, I should go about a career in fine art. So they were supportive, but they weren't helpful. And I suppose I never really considered that I would be an artist. I always thought that that was like a hobby, that it was not a career. And so I studied other things too on my way towards college, but when I got to college, I realized I had to go with what I really loved doing most.
Yeah, and you do it very well.
Thank you.
You know, you're known for a series of works named Sunspot Abstract. So for those in our audience that are unfamiliar with this style, how would you describe it, and are any of these works on display here at Chroma?
They are not currently on display here. They were on display in the previous show. What they are is, imagine a sunset over time. You watch the sun, and when you move your eye away from the sun, you carry with you in your field of vision a spot, and then another spot, and then another spot. And you find yourself almost dizzied by the spot. So that what I was trying to do is not just paint a landscape, but use the spots to paint a landscape over time, to give a sense of really experience, or to mimic the experience of sitting there for a period of time and watching a sunset. This has an infinite array of options. You could do it. There's no end to how many ways in which I could present that. And it's been an obsession for me going back to the time I was 27. I'm 67 now. So it's one of those themes that I come back to because I'm very comfortable with it. And I guess it's my creative real estate. It's where I live.
Wow. And so if they're not on display locally, where can one see?
Well, you can see them on my website, which is hammersteinmedia.com. There's also a gallery in Cape Cod that has an assortment of them. The name of that gallery is Miller White Gallery.
Good to know.
And they have maybe 5 or 6 of them, I think. But Hammerstein Media would be the place where you could see them all.
Oh, great, great. Now, what are some other elements that influence your art?
Well, I think rhythm. Like with the sunspots, which is something over time, such as music is something over time, I like to present a painting that's beautiful, but there's a sense that there's a logic underneath it. But you don't know what the logic is. You just know it's there. So it gives you something to do when you look at the painting, to try to make sense of it. I enjoy the trick of that, the sense that when you see it for the first time, that's not all you're going to see. That over time, something's going to give itself up, and you'll realize that what you've been looking at has a logic to it.
So would that rhythm that you mentioned be evident in, let's say, for example, the work that's
in some of them more than
us?
others, yes. In a case like this, I'm overlapping palettes of color, which I've divided to 24 different colors, 8 times 3, which then I double and triple and invert and flip and then stretch. I play with them until I get to an image that I really like, and then I capture it and I put it on canvas. And with the paintings over there, that's basically a unit of time divided into like 11 and then divided into 16, or so that I'm overlapping 11 over 16. I will get this third pattern that comes with breaking up time in different ways. So time is very much part of it.
And certainly I'm no art critic, but I can appreciate fine art. And I would say everything in this room exudes a lot of energy and interest, and it's very exciting. I would urge everyone to come and see
Thank you.
what's on display.
I'm an art for art's sake kind of guy. I just like to play with paint. I just like to play with ideas. I don't have a big political context or a big social context. I really am doing this for the love of the image that I'm making. I don't have any greater agenda.
Well, since we're talking specifically about your paintings, what materials or techniques do you typically use in your works?
Oh, I use everything. With the sunspots, I almost always use oils, but sometimes I will use. They don't even make it anymore, but I used to use and still get a hold of silkscreen oil paint, which is thinner and interesting to move around. I'll use acetone, xylene. I'll use oil paints. I use tape. Whatever I need to use, I'll use. I make a mess.
Oh, that's truly, you do use everything. So what are you working on now? Is it individual pieces, a new series, or another exhibit in the near future, or all of the above?
I'm trying to figure out a way to combine the rhythm paintings with the palette paintings. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but I have some ideas.
Now, are there any local artists that you follow or admire?
Oh, yes. I do like a painter of Times Square named Tom Christopher. He's a wonderful painter.
We know him, he's a local.
He's a local. I like Vince Baldessano a great deal. I think his work is wonderful. Ed Giobbi just had a show that was wonderful to see. And I like the artist that I'm showing with now, Julie Rosenberg.
Oh, I see.
You got to understand, we artists don't get around much. The fact that we would know any other artists at all is kind of like herding cats. It's not likely.
Now, besides being a painter, you're an author and lecturer of the Hammerstein family legacy, the family historian. So tell us about the book you've written.
It was about a decade ago. I wrote a book called The Hammersteins, a musical theater family. And I suppose that my goal was twofold. One was to make an easy to read overview coffee table book that people could enjoy lightly. It was also an attempt to introduce people who love Rodgers and Hammerstein to the first Oscar Hammerstein the First, which is also a misnomer. He was never called Oscar Hammerstein the First when he was alive. It was only after he was dead and there was a second one that they had to give him the first as a part of his name. But he popularized opera in his day, sort of the way station between yesterday's opera and today's musical theater. And he also created the theater district we now call Times Square. So I thought that to best explain how Oscar 2.0 came into being, it was probably smart to start with describing who Oscar 1.0 was.
You know, kind of along those same lines, what are some of the unique elements about the family and the musical history that are often revealed in your lectures?
Well, Oscar Hammerstein II said it best. First of all, people will remember the best 5 shows or the best 6 shows: Oklahoma Carousel, South Pacific King and I, and Sound of Music. Some may remember Allegro, some will of course know Cinderella, some may know that he produced Annie Get Your Gun. But he wrote about 60 shows in his life, which means that his success to failure ratio is quite sobering. And the 2 things he said is he described himself as an idiot, but he works hard. That perspiration, not inspiration, is really the key to the whole project. And to not think about the last ball, think about the next ball. That was his tennis metaphor. He goes, what you finally put on the stage, once it's on the stage, it's behind you. Whether it's successful or a failure, you have to move on from it.
Well, you just answered what would have been my next question, which was, would you share with us any anecdotes about your grandfather and his creative process, which you basically just did.
The joke they had was with Rodgers, I think it was Richard Rodgers who said it. who said about Larry Hart, the difference between Larry Hart and Oscar Hammerstein was that Larry Hart took 3 weeks to find and 3 minutes to write a song. And it took 3 minutes to find Oscar, but 3 weeks for him to write a song. And I think that pretty much describes it well. Also, Stephen Sondheim had a great quote where he said that Oscar Hammerstein was a man of limited talent and limitless soul. And that Richard Rodgers was a man of limitless talent and limited soul, which I think tells you a whole lot about Stephen Sondheim.
Now, since you mentioned Richard Rodgers, did you meet him when you were growing up?
I did. Unfortunately, my memories of him are when he had throat cancer, so he was more of a quiet presence. Yes, I had the good fortune to meet both Richard Rodgers, and I got the high honor of, in my life, having been introduced to Irving Berlin. Yeah. When people drop names in conversation about who's the most famous person that they've met, I always go,
Irving
beat
Berlin.
that.
And no one can. So my next question is kind of a two-parter, Andy. Give us your thoughts about the new musicals that are appearing on Broadway today, and your thoughts about Rodgers and Hammerstein revivals that are appearing on Broadway stages. And are they true to the original production?
Well, some are and some aren't in both answers. With regards to the new musicals that I see today, as my wife will tell you, I am an awful person to go to a musical with because I tend to hate almost everything. I don't know why, I'm just cynical. I think I've been around this block too many times. And I will point out what's wrong, and I will actually ruin musicals. Sitting next to my wife, I will say what's about to happen, and she'll look at me like, stare daggers at me like, how could you do that? And I'm like, it's so obvious. That said, I think that the musicals are the talent of a man named Adam Gettle are remarkable. He's a genius. And he happens to be Richard Rodgers' grandson, which is ridiculous as a storyline. But his work, Light in the Piazza, Floyd Collins, and he's doing a show now called Days of Wine and Roses, which is an adaptation of the movie, which is what he does a lot of. Run, Don't Walk to his shows.
And then as far as the Rodgers and Hammerstein revivals,
Well, that all
what's your
depends.
thoughts on?
I just saw a revival at the West Connecticut State University of Allegro that was enchanting. It was the best production of Allegro I've ever seen by far. And then you'll have shows like Oklahoma at the St. Anne's Warehouse, which was a travesty from beginning to end. So it's an uneven. I can't answer that. I do it based upon on a per show per production basis.
Well, as you said, some are and some aren't true to
To
the original.
There is a problem today with. It's not a question of revisionism. It's a question of if you put on the revivals, you have to worry about how the fact that they were written for an audience for 1940s or 1950s is very different from what the audiences of today are like. People are very mindful not to hurt anyone's feelings nowadays, and that's a mixed blessing.
Expectations are different.
Very different.
For sure. So I'm going to shift a little bit to something local. You've lived in the hamlet of South Salem for many years. South Salem is one of 5 hamlets that are within the town of Lewisboro. What do you like about our town?
Well, I moved out here when my kids were small. I really appreciate John Jay, the high school, and the school system here. I love the Mountain Lakes Park area. I live on a lake. I've got a pontoon boat. I couldn't be happier. It was better for me when the children were younger, but I still appreciate all that this neighborhood has to offer.
Yeah, it is lovely here. What else would our viewers like to know about Andy Hammerstein?
Well, I am very interested in the history of entertainment, and I am attempting with my brother to work on a project where we're going to try to bring the history of entertainment, starting with the birth of Times Square, to life. And that is something that will be occupying much of my time going forward. To write based upon a true story, which is a whole nother world for me.
Well, we'd certainly like to hear more about that. Maybe we'll have to do a subsequent show.
Once we get it.
And once
Yeah.
that is underway. Andy, you mentioned earlier that you have some works on display in a gallery in Cape Cod, and of course, you have many works on display here at the Chroma Gallery in Katona. Where else can our viewers see more of your artwork?
Well, I have a website called hammersteinmedia.com that has a pretty complete assortment of my paintings and my other artwork, and also has descriptions of the lectures I give and of the productions that I have done over the course of many years. So it's a pretty complete testament to my history.
Oh, good. And tell us the website address again.
hammersteinmedia.com.
That's great. That's good to know. And I'm sure that our viewers are going to want to take more than just a peek at your website. Andy, it's been a great pleasure to have you on the show today. I want to thank you for joining us on A Conversation With, and thank our viewers for watching LCTV Channel 20. Until next time, this is Linda Press Wolf for LCTV Channel 20. Channel 20 was a winner of overall excellence in government access.
You're watching Lewisboro Community Television, Channel 20.